you are gonna see some cool ass shit.
Yeah, you don't want two Flavor Flays.
Heart transplants, brain surgeries. I've seen it all.
Dude, that's fucking dope.
Walk up and just get it, whatever it is.
Yeah, brother.
I'm trying not to laugh, bro, but Josh is fucking killing me.
Guess what Navy SEALs do, motherfucker? They communicate and they're on the same fucking page.
Whoa.
And we're live.
Welcome, everybody, to the Happy Hoodlums podcast. It's the Happy Hoodlums themselves, Mr. Kemper Woodruff and Zachary Sampson. And we have a first tonight because we got a part 2 with big old Joseph White. He just had so many crazy stories. We had to decide to run a part 2. And last episode, if you missed it, we went over how he got into the maritime business and the beginning of his career in that field. And when we ended, he was beginning to backtrack a little bit. And to quote, I started out in a small town of 1,000 people in Colorado and traveled the world by 25 years old. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Joseph White. Take it from there, Joe.
Thank you so much for having me come back onto this podcast. I feel really great to be able to come back and share these stories. It's not every day that you get to go ahead and travel the world via ship, especially getting paid to do so. Most people hop on a cruise ship and that's their world. But starting off back where we were, what we were talking about, I was leaving Southampton, England. That was a interesting final stretch. That was my final leg getting back to the U.S. after 166 days aboard a ship. Every one of those worked. It's kind of a tough lifestyle, but man, once you get into it, it can be very interesting out there.
Did it pay
But
well?
we were...
On a side note, we never even touched the pay.
Well, if you work in a shipping company off of the East Coast, it doesn't pay well. It pays well for over there, but not for over here. I was getting maybe $2,000 to $3,000 a month. So, but some ships you can get upwards of like 100 or 9,000 a month. So it all depends on what licenses you have and what categories you really stick with.
Right on.
Engineering department being probably the most better paying.
That was me just doing math. I was like 166 days straight. I was like, God, I came back like, I'm balling, bitch. What's up? Maritime life.
Oh, yeah. Even with that amount of pay, still came back with a hefty pocket and was feeling pretty nice for a little while. Was able to actually take a few months off after I got off the ship, but we'll get to that point here in a moment. Starting back off where we were just leaving Southampton, and we ended up having the onboard fire happen right as we were leaving. It gave us kind of the, well, you got some bad luck ahead of you. So we ended up finally putting that fire out, and the worst part was we still had the bar pilot on board, which having an incident happen while having one of those guys aboard is kind of like bad. They're not happy about that stuff.
Did you say
so? A bar pilot.
Yeah.
A bar pilot. So a bar pilot is actually someone who will get on the boat from their home port, who knows those waters. So they know all the depths. They know all the areas where to turn and what to do, and they will actually be the guys who will take over the ship from the captain, which is kind of a neat thing. But we have one of those guys on board, and having an incident usually happen with them, it's not the best thing. But after we got that incident cleared up and we started our way back home, we ended up running into some horribly foul weather for 2 weeks straight. For the entire time that we were transiting across the Atlantic upper hemisphere, we were just getting bashed by 22 to 30-foot swells constantly, nonstop. I actually even have a few videos of where we're just bearing through this water and getting our asses kicked. It was something else.
Dude,
During that
I would
time, we even. Oh, go ahead.
I would love to see that because the only thing I can think of in relation to that is like the Wolf of Wall Street, where they have that scene where he's on ludes and just like in the middle of the storm and shit.
Oh, yeah, no, that's that I gotta say, compared to that, that's child's play.
Oh man,
Because I mean, even having those 22-foot swells, it's not common for you and your ship to actually be going through. Here, we'll go ahead and turn on the light here. It's not common to actually have a ship go through a storm, but this storm was just so freaking big that it was literally the entire upper hemisphere of the Atlantic Ocean. And during the winter time, which was when we were actually traveling back, that's when it's just the worst weather ever.
dang.
And I used to have shipmates who couldn't deal with almost still water, and I kept thinking of those times like, man, I was out there for 2 weeks. I felt the entire ship rocking while I was sleeping, while I was working. I was moving through the cargo holds, and I was always worried of our equipment and cargo actually breaking free of its chains. Because we had, in the cargo hold, we had like these truck beds stacked up on one another, and they were chained down to each other. And they stood up about 25 feet. And I was always worried of when getting the ship rolling from side to side. I just watched those things kind of teeter a little bit and creak, and I was like,
Did
"This is no
people
fun."
throw up at all?
A lot of people fed the fish out there. I was not one of them, though. I was lucky, and I was born with a sailor's stomach, so
Well, you got
it
blessed there.
was.
I can imagine that
Oh,
would be horrible.
seasickness was a big. I'd say it's not a disqualifier for ships, but I would not suggest you working on a ship if you have seasickness. You will not have a good time. Especially if you get caught out in a storm, sometimes it's 2, 3 weeks. And if the vessel gets disabled, it's even longer. Especially
Damn.
if you have to abandon the ship. If you're in the middle of the ocean, you gotta wait about 6 weeks. Or not 6 weeks, sorry, 6 days to get rescued.
Damn.
Okay. I was gonna say
So
6 weeks, bro. That's some Gilligan's
6 weeks.
Island shit. They're just like,
They're
It's
stalling on
yeah,
your ass, bro. Like, they're like just
well,
they're
waiting.
somebody,
really yeah, that's if you're unlucky, 6 weeks. If you're lucky, 6 days.
did you ever encounter
But
pirates?
no, I actually had an interesting occurrence though when I was over in Morocco. There would be vendors who would come up on these small boats right alongside the ship, and they'd start yelling up at you like, "Hey, you wanna buy? You wanna buy?" I was like, "No, we're good." I always tried to wave them off, and they'd always keep coming back. We were there for like 2 days, and they just kept trying to sell us stuff.
See, people don't know about that
So,
Moroccan hustle. They know
Yeah.
about New
oh yeah,
York
no,
hustle. They ain't seen no
they
fucking hustle like Morocco.
one of the craziest things is if you actually do buy from them and you have a boat that actually has no pilot station being where you can unload a pilot to transit the inland waters. They will actually they'll toss up a bag, you'll put the money in the bag, and you'll toss it back down, and then they'll toss up the goods that you want like 15 feet up to you onto
Damn.
the deck.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
these guys had an arm. But back to where we were. We were traveling across the ocean, 2 weeks of just straight horrible weather. And I just remember sitting on the side of the ship, just watching the waves get, you know, us plowing through the waves. We would just go into a very deep trough, and I just feel the ship lurch forward, and just watch this water just go crazily over the bow sometimes. Um, One of the funniest parts about ships is if you go on to the anchor deck, which would be considered the what was it called? I gotta remember the terminology for it.
That's
It's
okay.
been a little while since I've done it, but so the
Where?
anchorage deck, they have these things called hawse pipes, and that's where the anchor chain goes through. The really funny part about that is if you actually slam the bow of the ship into the water deep enough, you could actually see what we like calling the ship is blowing its snot. Is you'll see a bunch of frothy, foamy water shoot right up out of those hot pipes and slams into the bridge.
Dirty.
So,
Okay. Well,
yeah,
dude, hold on. For
yeah.
just me and anyone else that doesn't know shit about ships, where is the bow? Is the bow the
The bow.
Titanic part where you're in the front like this?
So, yeah, that's the very front. So, the simplest way to put it, there's a pointy end and then there's a blunt end. The blunt end's the back of the ship. The pointy end's the front of the ship.
Okay.
Yeah, that's actually something that I heard from guy who worked on the USS Hornet. So
Okay.
pretty
So
it's pretty funny terminology, and that's something we actually use.
after your like what ship are you on? And I know you were telling me that you wound up in Saipan. So you went from this ship
Yeah,
and you were last we were talking when you were over in England and stuff. You had been
yeah.
transporting military equipment, correct?
Military equipment, farm equipment. Funny enough, you know where your John Deere tractors come from? They come from Poland. They don't come from the U.S. Yeah,
Okay.
we would transport shiploads of tractors, large tractors, combines, even sometimes. So,
Damn.
but we did shiploads across that ocean of tanks, military equipment. Sometimes we'd even do farming equipment. We even transported trains, entire trains.
What?
There was a brand new Amtrak train that came over here. It's the new bullet train that Amtrak was creating.
Mm-hmm.
We hauled those cars over here.
Oh shit.
Whoa.
Like the entire train cars. We had 3 of those things on board.
Dang. That's pretty
So
fascinating that
it was
ships
pretty
can
crazy.
carry that much weight.
Yeah, this thing, the ship that I was working on was, we call it a roll on, roll off. It's 680 feet long.
Dang.
Fuck. 2
So
football
think
fields.
about moving, yeah, think about moving a 40-story or a 20-story, 20 to 30-story building. I think that's correct. May have to check my math on that. But
That's okay.
yeah,
We're using bro math here on Happy Hoodlum.
Damn straight.
we're using
Rocks and
2
sticks.
football
That's
fields.
official bro estimate for all you fucking sciencey guys. You guys can drop it in the comments if you're gonna nerd out on this. But
Oh, yeah,
um,
definitely.
I know that you went from one ship to another, and your adventures changed in intensity. So, at
Yeah.
what point and on what ship were you? How did that go down? You know.
So, well, first off, I uh, finally was getting back to Baltimore, which was the final port that I actually ended up serving to. A couple nights before we actually ended up getting to the port, I was still kind of thinking over what next ship I wanted to get on. And in time, it was pitch black. It was dark. I was sitting on the bridge for 8 hours, and this was my shift every single night. I'd sit up on the bridge, we're still going through the foul weather. And I'm just kind of thinking what next ship I kind of want to go on. And they were telling me, like, we have some military sea lift command ships that, we need people for. We need training. I was like, okay, cool. I'll get back to you when I get into port. And during this time, while I was talking about that stuff and thinking it over, the AB and I, which is able-bodied seaman, the guy who drives the ship, and I was the guy who assisted the driver of the ship. We're both sitting up on this bridge, pitch black. All we have is the instruments in front of us, all the control panels, and it's quite cool. I could actually send a picture of that over as well. But we ended up hitting a wave so freaking hard during the darkest part of the entire voyage. Like, I couldn't see 30 feet in front of this bow. I couldn't even see the bow. It was so dark. And we hit this wave so hard. It took me and the guy sitting next to me in our high chairs, and it threw us forward onto the console.
Oh,
And we were
shit.
like, oh my God, what did we hit? What happened? And the second mate who was up on the bridge, he was like, hey, White, you need to go ahead and, during your next fire watch, when you go and patrol down below in the cargo hold, I need you to go up into the bulbous bow and make sure that we didn't hit anything and didn't, start taking on water. And that's something you just never want to hear in the middle of the night on a ship.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, when I went down there, that's some oh man, let me tell you that things were tighter after that. we were definitely like, oh God, that's not fun. But I went down there. Luckily, there was no water coming into the ship. Everything was absolutely fine. We just ended up hitting a wave really hard. We ended up probably dipping into a 30-foot deep trough.
Okay, you can protect the names of the innocent or of the guilty so they can remain innocent, I suppose. But in
Yeah.
that line of work, were there many stoners? Because I know that like tons of physical labor jobs, like even like wildland firefighting, dude,
Yeah.
there's stoners that get into those kinds of lines of work. And I'm like, I'm just curious if someone was like roasted, because if I was baked as fuck in the middle of the night and we hear that, I would have been so paranoid. Like, dude, this was
Oh yeah.
majestic. Now
So,
it's horrible.
so I will say this is kind of a little bit of a backtrack. This happened a few months before the end of my voyage,
Hmm.
but we didn't have a lot of stoners, but we sure as hell did have a chef that loved to drink. And he chose the worst day to drink ever. We had a firefighting drill, and he was completely wasted,
Oh, shit.
off the rocker, totally wasted. And he's standing next to the captain, slurring and kind of stumbling back and forth how the ship is making its way. And everybody noticed him. We all kind of locked eyes and looked at him, and we're just like, something ain't right here, and he's numero uno not right.
Yeah,
And
dude.
then the next day, next day when I woke up, um, we didn't have any breakfast. We didn't have any, real meals. I was like, what's going on? I had the second mate come up to me, pull me aside, and said, hey, at any point in time, if you see the cook walking around on deck, you need to immediately escort him back to his room and make sure the door is locked. And you need to notify me as soon as that happens. Like, what's going on? And he's like, the chef had a talk with the captain. Turns out that he was wasted. He had almost an entire bottle of whiskey empty in his quarters during the fire drill, and the captain has barred him to his room, and he's going to be getting dropped off at the next port, which was happened to be Baltimore at the time. This was way before I got off. Like,
Damn, y'all dropped him off in
whoa.
the hood. I
Yeah.
said,
So
dropping him
he's
off in
lucky.
England, son.
I gotta say, he is very, very, very lucky we weren't going over to like Belgium or Poland or somewhere in the EU. Because
I
if
feel
you
like
were,
that's
you know,
better,
in
bro.
that
Kick me
situation,
out there, bro. I'll be a fucking
you,
no visa having Belgium drinking
oh,
warm beer, but that dude's
so
off in the
you
hood
think it'd be good?
somewhere.
You think it'd be really great, but in reality, you have to pay for your way back home. And they only tell the authorities this guy is going immediately to the airport and getting on a plane and flying back home. And you have to pay for it. And those flights are not cheap. On last moment flights from the EU, those can cost you a good chunk of change.
I'd have
They
got lost.
hurt.
They wouldn't have known where I was at.
I had someone actually do that. They got lost on the way back to the airport and got pissed drunk. And the authorities dragged him to the airport and said, "You get on plane now, or we are going to put you in jail."
I'd have pulled the classic no speaky. You know
No.
what I'm saying?
I
I don't know
don't
what
speak
you're
your language. It's like, we speak English. I'm mute.
Yeah,
saying.
you start hitting sign language and shit.
But so we finally got back to Baltimore,
All right.
and I we're there for about 2 days, and I'm getting off the second day. And so I am finally winding down for my last shift day. And it's me, the bosun, and two able-bodied seamen who are helping out with deck work. And we're doing a bunch of stuff, and it starts snowing, and it's cold as hell, fucking freezing, and I'm over here in thin coveralls and rubber boots, freezing my ass off. The bosun finally comes up and says, "Hey, White, time to go up and get some chow. All right, we'll let someone fuck off and take your position." And I still love this story because this bosun, he absolutely hated this chief mate that we had. He was an old groggy dude. He was an asshole. And not a lot of people liked him. And we go up to the chow hall, and it's breakfast time. We put our order in, and we sit down at a table closest to the window. And the worst part a bosun could ever hear on the radio is bosun chief mate. And we're sitting there waiting for our food, and we hear this call come over. And in the middle of breakfast service with at least 10, maybe 15 people inside the chow hall, he screams at the top of his lungs, "Fuck!" And nonchalantly, as calm as could be, grabs the radio and says, "Bosun, go ahead." It made everybody around jump. And it just made me laugh later on, just thinking, like, holy shit, he just went ahead and at the top of his lungs just screamed "fuck." Because he just did not want to do what he was asking.
That's pretty awesome. So, all right, are you
Yeah.
like, you go from cold as shit in Boston, and you're like,
To the
fuck that,
hottest, most
I'll
consistent
take
weather ever.
anything but cold. So, how do you get to Saipan from Boston?
So after I get off of that ship, I get a call back from SIU saying that they want to train me up for military sea lift command stuff. So I say, okay, cool. I go for a couple months up into Maryland, and I start going through their training course. I start training on their vessel there. I learn how to run a double knuckle crane. I learn how to do one of the things that I think is the scariest job as a firefighter: ammunition cooling during a fire. They train us how to do that. They train us how to do firefighting against a helicopter crash, and extra additional firefighting when it comes down to aviation fuel related spills and other dangerous military chemicals. After I do a couple weeks up in Maryland at I think it was called Piney Point. Yeah, Piney Point, Maryland. I go ahead and meet up with some of my buddies up there. We end up doing a bit of drinking out at the site as well. Had some fun. I got the nickname from the double knuckle crane, the judge. Because every time I put the knuckle of the crane back into the cradle of the deck, it would slam down and it would ring the entire ship.
All right. Judge
So I
Joseph
ended up
White.
getting that nickname, the
I like
judge.
it.
So after that, I then immediately get a call as soon as I'm leaving the center. They say, "Hey, we need somebody to go ahead and relieve some ABs over here on a ship in Saipan. And you'll be stationed at anchor for about 4.5 months. And you'll just basically be out there." And so it's actually really, really cool because the ship that I got called out to is a one of a kind ship, the only one in the world. And it is a converted T500 ocean going tug, the tugs that actually pull around the giant oil rigs. And it was converted into a fuel transfer ship for the Navy.
Hmm.
And the cool part about this is it has these giant 15-foot spools, 15 to 20-foot spools. Some of them were much larger. They actually went up to about 25, 30 feet in the air. Like they were just that big of this giant fuel transfer hose. And they were designed to go up into areas where it was really hard to go ahead and refuel ships close to certain areas. And you would hook up to a oil vessel or a fueling vessel nearby and run 700 feet to about 1.5 miles of hose
Whoa.
or more, depending on what you needed to do. You could fuel up to about 1 mile away. And we'd drop this hose and go and hook up to another Navy ship that needed refueling, and we fill them up while being kind of the intermediate ship that would just sit with what's a really cool system called dynamic positioning. It uses satellites to actually translate your position to the engines from these giant swing downs that would go down and keep us in one spot. So this
Whoa.
ship could literally turn on a dime, and it's about 200, 210 feet long. So I ended up getting on this ship, and we got to go ahead and sit out in Saipan. And Saipan's a super cool place. For a little bit of interesting history, everyone knows that we dropped the nuclear bombs on Japan. Not a lot of people know where those nuclear bombs came from. Saipan is the place.
Blame those Saipanese
So
motherfuckers, and we're sorry. We're sorry.
we're
Japan, I
sorry.
just gotta let you know,
So
we fucked up because Japanese
this,
culture is so dope. Okay, continue.
yeah,
That's just my apology
this
from
was
America to Japan.
all
There we go. All
yes,
right.
Japanese culture is amazing. Um, but kind of one of the really cool things about this place was it was really old, really run down. There was old military bunkers. There were still military guns, kind of like they had chunks taken out of them. There was old tanks all over this place. There was even a couple Sherman tanks that were sitting in this crystal clear water, clearest water you will ever see. Could see 70 feet to the bottom. And that
Damn.
is like no joke. And I got to be stationed on this ship, just sitting there at anchor. And I actually had a couple really cool occurrences happen on there. Some firsts and sometimes some stuff that I will never, or mostly anyone will never get to do ever again because it's so rare. Um, After being there for about 1.5 months, we had a emergency call out from a nearby island that was about 2 to 3 days away from our position. It said, this volcano that we are staying on is active, and we need as many vessels to come here to evacuate the island. And we were
Dude,
one of the
you
ones
were
that were
full
called.
of volcano rescue?
Yeah. Yeah, we actually ended up going and aiding. We didn't we unluckily didn't get to do the rescue because they just finished it a few hours before we got there. But we were still in transit to there, and I got to watch through the binoculars an active volcano going off that we got
Oh,
called out to help rescue people off of, because this island did also have some inhabitants who, just made that their home.
that's way
That's
cooler than
wild.
rescuing an old lady off of a dock.
That is true. That was that was something else. Like, just kind of thinking about that. Nobody, like, the amount of people who have been called out to do a rescue mission of an island in the middle of nowhere, and this is, a few hundred miles in the ocean. This is right along the Marianas Trench. And there's just nothing out there but a few islands. And one of them calls you up and says, "Hey, this volcano is going off. We need you guys to come pick us up." Like, nobody else can actually say, "Man, I got to do that."
Yeah,
Yeah, that's fucking
that's
So
for sure.
that was one of the first occurrences that I ended up actually getting to do something really cool out there.
So like
The next few times, oh, go ahead.
if you're rescuing somebody from like a volcano, do chicks like show you their tits and stuff? Like you come out.
I mean, sometimes if you're if you're lucky, you might be able to get that, but it doesn't happen all the time.
All right,
It,
I was just
it's
checking.
it's but I will say the beaches on Saipan, they got a lot of hot chicks on it. That's for sure.
I believe it.
So,
That's what I'm saying. All I can imagine is just the chillest party was going on at this freaking volcano, and you showed up to rescue the kegger.
yeah. Um. So one of the cool little neat things, there over in Saipan, there's a tiny little island that's right at the end of the breakwaters that uh, separates the inner portion of the bay compared to the rest of the ocean. In this cool little island, we ended up having a maritime party on it.
That's
And
sweet.
before my shift started, I got to go ahead and go to this island, and I just got to drink beers with the entire crew. We had some people definitely get a little shit faced. We went out there and brought a whole bunch of beers. There was coconuts all over the ground, so we were trying to open them up and, you know, make mixed drinks from the coconuts. And
Yeah.
we were just having a great time out there. I got a little sunburned because, white boy in an area that is, 85 degrees all year round with 100% humidity. It's known as the place of the most consistent temperature in the world.
Huh.
Yeah. So
That's pretty
uh,
dope.
after that, we ended up having to leave the island actually at one point in time because we weren't big enough. And one of the things you can tell from a tiny island like that is we were around in monsoon season. So we had massive storm systems coming through that area. And there were a whole bunch of other military ships that were actually stationed there too. A bunch of military MSE, um, bunch of like ro-ros and cargo ships and fueling ships that were just stationed there. And when the storm started coming, every one of them would start picking up their anchors and they would leave. They would just sail out to the ocean away from the storm as to not damage the ship or risk damaging it.
Dude.
And so we would pick up our anchor with them, and we would see like these massive cloud storm systems coming in. It just looks like an encroaching giant of just massive dark clouds, and it just looks like it's going to be really horrible weather. We'd pick up our anchor and we'd hastily make our way out to the ocean, and we just putt around a few about over the horizon, about 15-20 miles, or we travel out to about 100 miles and just putt around for a little while before coming back, because if we stayed there during the storm system, being a 200-foot long ship, we would have gotten swamped and we would have probably had to evacuate the ship at some point in time. So like, okay, storm coming, we gotta go.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did that a few times. We actually ended up having an occurrence where we were like, you know what? Guam is nearby. And it doesn't look like Guam is going to get hit by this storm. So we're just going to go ahead, go out to Guam, anchor out in the bay, or we're going to go ahead and get laid up in a military dock and get to just kind of chill out there, wait for the storm to pass by. And so we decided, you know what, screw it, we're going to go ahead and go over to Guam for a couple days. Um, we have some military exercises that are being requested upon us to be a part of, which is pretty cool. First night that we ended up actually getting there, we had a Morse code exercise where we traveled just outside of the bay of Guam, and we just basically we did Morse code signals to all the other
Oh,
military ships, and we utilized our special codes and signatures to this cool place.
that's pretty throwback cool. All right.
Yeah.
So when did you come across, you said that you came across some Navy SEALs in your travels. Was this when you were in Guam?
Yeah, this was actually when I was in Guam. So sadly, we did have some we did have a unfortunate occurrence of some oh, hold on one second.
How are you?
Howdy, sir.
Oh snap, this is a first in Happy Hoodlums history. We have a security officer being interviewed by a cop live on air. You've seen it here. We've never seen it before.
Never.
Thank goodness he's not dressed like Zach. They'd
Yeah.
have been like, "Excuse me, sir. I'm gonna need you to step out of the car.
What do you
Unroll
mean?
your socks. You got
Sorry
crack."
about that, guys. I'm over at a shipping depot, and I just had a truck driver come up and ask me where to go and take his load, and I was like, I just come by here once in a while and check out this area.
I
I
definitely
I don't
thought it
know
was a
exactly
cop.
where to take his stuff. I
I was
know.
like, all right.
Yeah, he kind of looked like it. He kind of looked like it. But so yeah, I ended up getting to meet some Navy SEALs, which was really cool. The really sad part was they actually had a simunition training set up and scheduled to go ahead and commit on board the ship, our ship. And they had to call it off because two of the guys got COVID.
Oh.
Oh,
And I was like, oh, come on, dude. That sucks. I really wanted to kind of get a souvenir of a bullet casing from the Navy SEALs, simunition rifles.
dude, I'm so pissed.
I just
So
felt like,
the fucking Navy SEALs were fucked off by COVID. That makes me so mad. You
they,
did Hell
so,
Week and you let fucking
I don't know.
COVID get you. Damn it.
So, the reason why we had to tell them that they could not come aboard is because our crew is immunely isolated away from the rest of the world. Who we have on board is, whatever germs that we bring on board can get the entire crew sick. And if the entire crew got COVID, we would literally have to say, everybody off this ship, we're doing an immediate crew swap. Like that's how serious we take immunocompromisation on board a vessel.
Whoa.
Damn. Okay.
So we
Was it
could
like
not
that
let that happen.
before COVID?
It was it's a lot more lax. Obviously, if you got sick, you'd be like, hey, I got a cold. And they're like, okay, put on a mask and make sure you wear it while you're working around people. We don't want you to spread a cold. Because vessels are a petri dish for just everything.
Yeah.
So you really have to be careful.
And they got some lonely sailors jacking off on the bridge at night.
Oh fuck.
Why do you think we make port so much? Why do you think brothels are at almost every single maritime port in the world? There's a
Yeah,
reason. Lonely sailors.
except Baltimore. They're
But
like, go find something.
except Baltimore, which is actually kind of true, except for Baltimore. That's kind of the funny part. Is you were not
Hey,
wrong on that part right
also,
there.
side note, shout out to the Baltimore Ravens. That's my squad. All right. So,
Hey,
all love to
hey,
Baltimore.
cupcakes from Baltimore. Those are fucking good.
I can imagine. Apparently, they got
Yeah.
some kind of special crab out in
Oh
Baltimore,
yeah,
like blue crab
I
or some shit.
I got to have it and it was good. But back to it. So the few Navy SEALs, they ended up actually bringing the rib boat, and the ones that were not in contact with those guys, they came up and they're like, "Hey, we got some other exercises that we would like to actually do. We would like to bring Navy EOD on board and have them train on how to, blow up a ship or find and defuse explosives on board a vessel. And these guys have to go through a maze of an engine room. Like these engine rooms, they're 3 stories tall. And they have machinery, they have pipes, they have all this crazy equipment
Whoa.
lining the walls and just making it impossible to find something hidden. And so instead of having Navy SEALs come on board and train, we had Navy EOD come up in one of their really, super silent little rib boats. Like, I didn't even know that these guys were alongside us until I heard a voice down below say, "Hey, open up the gate. Navy EOD's here."
Oh
I
shit.
looked over the side, I was like, huh? I look down and there's their boat. I just barely hear the engine going. What the hell? I didn't even hear them come up. We're in the middle of the bay. These guys had to have been going hauling ass or going at a putt's pace. And so
Dang.
I opened up the gate, dropped down the bosun or the Jacob's ladder, and brought them back up on board. And they're like, hey, yeah, so we're just going to go ahead, have one of our guys, our comm guys, set up here. Where's the highest point on the ship so we can set up our comms array so we can talk to shore? And we're going to go ahead and set up some explosives, which were just these 5-gallon buckets filled with concrete that they brought down into the hold and marked as bomb. And they toss them into random places for these EOD guys to find. I never got to see them actually do or conduct the experiment, though they did do a diving exercise on the vessel where they dove underneath the ship and were looking at places where they could, find hidden explosives or, prep to charge a vessel, which was a pretty cool time.
Okay. Dude, that sounds pretty rad. Especially the
Yeah,
experience, just to experience anything Navy SEAL-esque is like a dream come true. But
I know it's really cool.
you also told us of a story off air that I want to get on here. And you said that there was a little bit of rowdiness and it kind of
Yeah.
sailor camaraderie led to cooking a pig in a 5-gallon drum. And so I'm
Oh
curious,
yes.
how this takes place on the high seas, matey.
Well, for one, you need either someone who lives in the Philippines or who is Filipino to really help you out get that pig. And I'm not joking. The
Yeah,
Filipinos, they know how to cook a pig. Anyone who's Filipino, you guys know. You know.
Filipino food
So
might be the greasiest of all Asian foods. I will say that, and it's probably
uh,
because they love pigs so much. So
w-
let's hear
when
it.
they do a pig, when they do a pig, it's an entire day event. It starts 6 a.m. and goes all the way to like 9 p.m. It is an event.
Yeah.
So we ended up having a bosun on board the previous ship who lived in the Philippines, and he had a Filipino wife and kid. And then we also had two Filipino engineers. And at one point in time, the captain was asking, "Hey, we would like to go ahead and do a crew camaraderie day. We want to, we kind of want to get everyone feeling good and happy, and we just want to have a barbecue on deck." And so the three Filipino guys, they said, "Hey, what if we got a pig and cooked it on board in the middle of the ocean and had a crew camaraderie day on one of the best days out there?" We said, "Fuck it, let's do it." They ended up uh, picking up a suckling pig at a point in time. I can't remember what port we got it at, but I believe it was somewhere along the U.S. coast. We picked up a small pig and we brought it on board. And we found a perfect day that was basically glass. It was straight, nothing, no wind, and sun was up in the sky, no clouds. It was beautiful. And the engineers, they cut a 55-gallon oil drum in half, put them together, threw a bunch of charcoals in it, lit it on fire, and welded a spit that day and started spit roasting a pig on deck. And I got a picture of me standing right next to the pig doing a peace sign in the middle of the ocean. And let me tell you, you've never had a suckling pig unless you have had it with the Filipinos, because they cook it so perfectly to where the skin is like a chip. It's a crispy chip. And you take a bite of it and it's amazing.
Dude,
It is something else.
that sounds amazing, but when you say suckling pig, it just makes me think of
It's a
just
small pig.
the worst slaughter of a pig that I've
No.
ever seen.
So
Like I'm thinking like Babe. Like you guys took Babe out to
no.
the middle of the ocean, just fucked it off, just ate it like savages.
So one of the really big things about the Filipinos is you never distress the pig before killing it. They will go ahead and get the cheapest liquor out there and they will just dump it into a trough and they will get the pig shit faced. And
That's
when the pig is
amazing.
shit faced, it is nice and relaxed.
It's a
And then they
secret
will come up
ingredient.
and they will shoot it in the head. Yeah, no, that's literally how they
Fuck.
do it. So now you know,
That
if you
is
want to cook a pig and you want to do it the right way, get it drunk first and then shoot it in the head.
That's
that's
amazing.
Coming from a Filipino
fantastic.
sailor.
What the
Yeah.
fuck? All right,
And
that
let me
might
tell
be
you,
the most Filipino
I've
shit I've ever heard. I love it. That's crazy. Was there
I, I've
gambling
I've had
involved at this
pig.
funeral?
Yeah. So I've had pig where they've, done a normal slaughter. And then I had this suckling pig where they did that with
I don't think I'm ever taking any kind of other slaughter.
with it. And I
You know,
was like,
I
oh
think
my God. It's
Filipinos
way
Filipino slaughter might be the best way to go.
better
if I ever get dementia, just mark my words. I want to go out like
Yeah,
Filipino
no.
slaughter. Okay.
Send that pig off at the party. They know how to do it.
Facts.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
After that, they scald the pig and then they go ahead and cook it for hours.
I can do without the scalding, but like
That's
I
one of
said,
major fun. Last, I know you guys probably are
if
wanting to get going. Is
if
that
I
correct?
wind up in a
Uh,
old folks home someday and I gotta go, the Filipino slaughter might be my chosen death.
yeah,
Same,
a lot
bro.
of sailors will choose that way. They would rather get ship faced and have that be the last thing that they do over a lot of other things.
Well,
Just kind of
it's
the
more
sailor's
the
way of
fact
drinking.
that they get you shit faced and then just shoot you in the head. I feel like that might be the most humane slaughter. The only other thing that could make it better is if they let you get laid first.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that's part of the process of a sailor's end life. Get shit faced, fuck, and then basically that's just the end of your world at that point in time.
Hey,
But
they're like, what more do you want? Okay.
yeah, no, one more. Where I mean, what else is a better way to go out?
I
I
don't
could
know,
think of
but
a couple, but I think that's a really good one.
that's a pretty good one. So you said you were on a ship called like the Vader or something.
Yes, the Vadim KR Wheeler. That was the one that I was talking about. The one of a kind ship that just you're never going to really see it. Funny
Okay.
enough, though, that ship is down in Seattle, Washington right now.
Okay.
So if you wanted to actually see that ship, you can go ahead and head on down to the docks there, and you might be able to catch a glimpse of it. Super cool ship. You'll never see another one like it because it's the only one in this world.
That's pretty dope.
But yeah, name is Vadim KR Wheeler,
Okay.
and
So
super cool.
how does this journey end? Okay.
So we do, I do gotta say, we do another 2 trips back to Guam. On the second trip back to Guam, I ended up in, I'm telling you, everyone out there, you're never going to have a boss tell you to do this thing that happens to me. My boss, who's the bosun, he comes up and he asks me when we're in Guam the second time, he asked me, have you ever gotten shit faced? Have you ever gotten drunk? And like at this point in time, I haven't. No,
Uh-oh.
Hold on, you're cutting out. You're cutting out. You gotta
haven't.
you gotta start over again.
I've
Your
never
boss
gotten to that
asked you
point
to
in
get
time. He said,
shit faced.
"Okay, bet you're coming to shore today, and you're getting fucked up on shore." Yeah, he asked me to get shit faced. Let me get to a better area, and
Technical difficulties.
he, as soon as I get along shore, we go. Is it still happening? Yeah, it is. All right. Is that better?
Better now.
We good?
Yep.
Yeah.
Run it.
Okay. So my boss tells me, "Hey, we're going ashore. We're gonna get shit faced. We're gonna have some fun." And I say, "Yes, sir. Sounds good. See you there." And he takes my ass ashore with the cook. Is this Hawaiian cook who's about 5'5"? Amazing dude, great cook. And then a local Saipan guy who's about 6 feet, my height, and 2 engineers. So it's me, the AB, the bosun, 2 engineers, the cook, and another AB. And we have a 24 pack of Bud Light. Of all drinks that we could have, we got the cheapest one. And we are in a gazebo across the water from the Navy SEALs barracks. and we get hammered. Ends up, one person brings a bottle of 190 proof Captain Morgan spiced rum because they're allowed to sell that there. And we get hammered to the point in time where we start mosh pitting to loud music. And I feel bad for the Navy SEALs over there. We start, you know, having a great time. We're dancing around. We're being a bunch of idiots. I'm through about 17 beers at this point in time and about 4 shots of that 190 proof and 4 shotgun beers. And then we decide, it's going to be a great idea to go ahead and wrestle. So I end up wrestling 3 of the crew members there. I end up wrestling the cook, my bosun, and the local Saipan guy. And I win against the cook and my bosun. But the local Saipan guy we called a draw. And so to this day, there's a picture of me shit-faced, no shirt on, hanging on to the side of the boat, going back to the big ship, throwing up a peace sign, looking completely happy.
That's
And
awesome.
this picture is somewhere out there. I gotta find it.
Well, dude, I tell you what, you've listed off a lot of pictures, and I can tell
I'm
right
gonna get them.
now that these are just timeless memories for you. I think honestly,
Definitely.
that's part of what inspired this part 2 of the podcast. And we had to get this last kind of hour and a half, whatever long this podcast goes for, is just like
Yeah.
your enthusiasm in the life that this adventure gave you is like, I feel rejuvenated just listening to this. Like, it's been so much fun just
All right.
having these stories be told that it's like, and Zach, tell me, did you have the similar experience of like, this is what this fucking podcast was made for?
Dude, I have that experience every time someone comes onto the podcast, but it's more relevant when we have guests with as unique stories as you do. And it's like,
Thank you.
yeah, it's really fun to listen to people talk. Like, I'm a quiet person in general and I like to listen to people, and so I enjoy stories, and you're good at it. So, and you've got good stories
Thank you.
to tell.
I really enjoy bringing these stories out there because it's an experience that not a lot of people actually know about. It's a world that most people are null and void of. If you think about it, like most people are like, yeah, we all got land stories and we all know how the world goes on the land, but not a lot of people know what it's like to be on a train going through the mountains or be on a ship going across the ocean, going to different countries, meeting interesting people, doing crazy stuff on ships, seeing insane things that most people would just barely be able to ever see. The only luck that you would ever have to see that is if you went on a cruise ship. And most of the time, I don't like paying to go on to, a job. I like going out there and, figuring out that, oh hey, I'm getting paid to go ahead and see the world. I'm getting paid to have these experiences and experience a crazy lifestyle that most people would be so scared of ever doing. And I gotta say, first time I ever got onto a ship, and most people will ever say this, is I felt so sick for the days following up to it. Like my gut was knotted up to the point where I wasn't eating anything until I got on board the ship.
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I just felt horrible because I was so scared that I was going away to the other side of the world alone. Nobody else. I don't know a single soul on board that ship. I don't know what I'm getting into or where I'm going. And I gotta say, I would gladly do it again. I would hop right onto that ship because it
See,
brought
dude,
me up to this point.
that's so freaking cool because, like, even just the way that you laid it out, because that's like the hidden gem of the story. because,
Yeah.
and I always say this, like, perspective is the most expensive thing that is free in the universe
Most
because you don't have to pay money for it, but it costs you like your innocence, right?
It
And it's
does.
like you're totally naive to this whatever experience you're having, right? And
Oh yeah.
then you go through it, and now, like, on the other side of it, it's like, yeah, it was scary, and yeah, it didn't come with all like glorious parts, right? Like, in
Oh yeah.
retrospect,
No.
you can gloss over some of the shitty days that were in between there when it was dragging on.
The
Go for it.
part though, the one thing that's kind of scary, I can count on two hands how many times I almost got into a situation that almost killed me on those ships. They're just
Yeah.
dangerous pieces
Shit.
of equipment, and if you don't know how to actually do it, you're either going to die or you're going to lose fingers.
Hmm.
And I know a lot of people will say, well, you got to be really careful about how you go about this stuff. And well, some of these situations, I was the most careful person on board that point in time or at that situation, and it still almost ended up in an accident. And it's all a matter of standing in the right place at the right time,
Hmm.
knowing where you're standing, where you're stepping. Because I, in fact, kind of one of the last stories. Um, there's also a whole bunch of small intermediate stories to this entire endeavor, but uh, when I was about to get off the ship in Guam, because it was our third time and our final time being in Guam, the ship was going back to Seattle to go ahead and get repaired. And I was about to be on that voyage going back over the seas, but I got lucky and I got a relief before I was, you know, to go over on that journey. I had a careless uh, chief mate actually decide to say, hey, we're going to go ahead and lift this pallet of 55-gallon oil drums up onto deck and place it on the deck. And me being the observing, safety for safety guy, I said, the only thing holding these things down to the pallet is those plastic straps that are only there to, keep them there for a moment. They are not load bearing whatsoever. We should go ahead and get a cargo net and put these in that cargo net and then lift them up. He said, no, it'll be fine. He ended up hopping onto the crane and started lifting these things up. And I was standing up against the railing looking at these oil drums about, 15 feet in the air above me. And as soon as he got it over deck, I said, I think I should probably step away from this. I stepped back about 10 feet and I heard a snap. And I saw two of these 55-gallon oil drums break free. And one of those things slammed down into the railing that I was just standing on. And this railing is about that thick around. And the metal that had the railing was about as thick as my finger. And it dented it in. And it fell down to deck and fell onto a deck hatch. And it caught the edge of it and it blew open. And it just started dumping oil all over the deck.
Damn.
And we had an open weather deck, so the bulwarking had cutouts to where the water could just go straight into the water. You dump oil into the water, the Coast Guard fines you for every gallon dropped in, upwards of, I think it was about $30,000 per gallon.
Fuck.
Expensive. And it was, oh man, it was horribly crazy. The second one that broke free slammed down into some other oil drums and dented that railing as well and fell down to the deck and was mangled crazy. The worst timing ever was this was right at chow time too. I was about to go and get dinner. I didn't eat that night. So because we ended up immediately calling every soul up to the deck, 22 people on board that ship. We called them up and we said, hey, everyone to the deck now, oil spill. Grab SOPEP, which is oil cleanup gear, and get it spread out. We have this stuff that looks, that's we call kitty litter, that it literally explains itself. Dumped it everywhere. And we started taking these oil absorption pads and started, cleaning everything up. And I was just standing there like, what a fucking mess. That barrel, that pipe, that could have been me in a second.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's better
Only it
than your
would have been
nugget.
squish. Yeah,
Yeah, you
that,
lost your
that could have
nugget.
been. It would have been more of a squish, and rather than a bang sound, I would have. Yeah, it would not have been fun.
Yeah, no bueno.
But no fun.
But
But yeah, that was the final voyage that I ended up having, and I ended up saying I think I need to take a break from the maritime for a little while, and that concludes about my 7 years served aboard maritime vessels.
that is
Right on.
awesome, dude. And we're happy that you listen to your intuition because that's really what it is, you know?
Yeah,
And
definitely watch out. Be
you know,
careful.
yeah, you kind of touched on something that's like no matter what you do, especially like the more honorable, I guess you could say something
Yeah,
is, it also comes with like an equal opportunity for danger. And danger can take
definitely.
place in like different ways, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes
most
like
definitely.
a job might not seem dangerous on paper, but it is like costly emotionally or something. You know, like there's all these different factors to it. But
Yeah,
how I look at what you were kind of going around and like touching on is like this priceless experience that you had
yeah,
y- allowed you to not only see the world like literally traveling,
yeah,
but now your perspective is you see things that other people overlook because you're part of a community.
most
And
definitely.
um, everyone is going to be a part of some community. And this is just a cool little spotlight on the maritime community from a different angle, you know?
Oh yeah.
And, I can't wait till one day we get a Navy SEAL on here that we can kind of ask about the Navy SEAL side of it. And they'll be like, yeah,
See how
those,
they do.
those damn bosuns getting tatered over in Guam. Fucking, how funny would that
Oh my
be?
god.
That'd be amazing.
The
Yeah,
day
those,
you find a Navy SEAL who was on Guam that day, and he talks about the sailors from the Wheeler getting shit faced in a gazebo across the water from us, come get me because I want to talk to that guy and apologize.
I will.
And just be like, man, we had a great time that night, but I understand we probably fucked up your sleep schedule.
Yeah, they'll be like, that son of a bitch, we took a picture of him throwing up a peace sign, getting dragged on the side of a boat. No, but
Asshole
anyways, man,
motherfucker.
you mentioned, and I think you touched on this when you closed last episode that you're getting into the railways and Union Pacific stuff, and you're
Yeah.
gonna go see America now, and I think that's the
Oh yeah.
most badass Mark Twain shit ever. And
I
so,
decided, you know, I wanted to get a job that was kind of similar to maritime, and the railroad ended up actually asking exactly the same stuff the maritime was asking. 12-hour days, working in any weather condition, free to go ahead and travel wherever you're needed. And I was like, this is very familiar to when I signed up to be a mariner. So now I get to see where this brand new thing gets to go. Instead of shipping cargo across oceans, I get to ship cargo across America and see exactly what goes on there. And now I'm going to have a whole new line of stories to go ahead and bring up while working on the trains and figuring out what that lifestyle is going to be like.
That's what's
for
up, dude.
sure. Well, thank you for joining
Sure.
us again, Zach. Before we close
You're
out, do
welcome.
you have any questions left?
I don't think that there's anything that I could ask that could close this podcast out any better than where we are. So
My man, no
All right.
stone left unturned. We just keep them bitches rolling. You feel me? Happy
Perfect.
hoodlums.
Make sure
Enjoy.
you make sure you walk with 2 right feet rather than 2 left feet.
that's
Yep,
boom.
you heard it
All
from the
right.
judge.